Hey everyone, it's Minutia Minute coming at you guys with another quick video. This is mostly for a friend of the channel, Clark Kent DaCosta Jeans DC. In a video recently, he was showing off some old Blackthorne publishing books, and I made a comment about the only three that I owned, which were the Star Wars ones, which he was not familiar with, so I just wanted to show those off here real quick. I'm actually really excited to show off this complete run of Blackthorne Publishing Star Wars books. As you can see, they're all in 3D, so I'm not going to open them up here, but I'll take some pictures and talk about some of the 3D effects with you guys. But yeah, basically this series ran between 1987 and 1988, basically just in time for the 10th anniversary of the original Star Wars. Issues came out super sporadically. It originally had 6 issues planned, but only 3 of them came out. The series is most notable for being written by Len Wein, at least the first 2 issues are. Each of the issues was illustrated by a different artist to varying degrees of success. I think that the first issue probably has the best art of the 3, and they kind of get progressively worse from there. For those of you guys who are familiar with Star Wars comics, you'll know that Star Wars ran all throughout the 70s and 80s through Marvel, who started with an adaptation of the original movie and then basically spun out from there, telling stories that took place basically between Star Wars and Empire. And then after Empire came out, they told some stories between Empire and Jedi before rounding out their series in the mid 80s with a little bit of stuff post Jedi, but not a lot. It was dormant for a while, and then Tom Veitch started kicking around the idea of Dark Empire. He actually pitched it at Marvel, and you can see ads in Marvel Age saying that they were going to be running a Star Wars book. Never really came to fruition in the late 80s. And then ultimately Dark Horse picked up the license and ran with Dark Empire, and the rest was basically history. Dark Horse ran it for 20 plus years until Disney came in and took over. As a result, not that many people are really familiar with this Blackthorne publishing line, and since it only ran for the 3 issues and was a pretty small publication, these are kind of sought after as oddities for Star Wars collectors. Beyond that, there's not a ton of value in these books in terms of Star Wars lore. They take place between Star Wars and Empire and tell how the Rebels got from Yavin 4 to Hoth, which is a pretty common story. It was told in radio dramas, it was told in the comics, it was told in newspaper strips, all different versions of the same story, and this is yet another version of that story. So, pretty unremarkable. This issue is probably the most interesting out of all of them, just because it brings Luke back to Tatooine. He basically has the deed to his aunt and uncle's moisture farm, which is now abandoned, and he wants to find someone appropriate to take over the farm since he's not going back there. Kind of a nice little denouement to the original Star Wars, answering the question, what happened to the moisture farm? Basically, gives it away to someone who needs it, which is kind of a cool idea. A nice little character moment for Luke and kind of brings his story full circle, but pretty small scale, just kind of a nice little character moment for them. This cover by far is my favorite of the 3. You'll see here when we get to issue number 2. It's a lot more bare bones of a cover. Not a huge fan of the cover art on this one. This is actually just interior art from the first issue. It's a really, really small panel that shows Luke, Han, and Chewie going from the streets of Mos Eisley into the cantina for a second time. The panel is only about this big, but they blew it up, made it the cover. Not really sure why, other than they just didn't want to pay to do proper art for the cover to issue 2. It's especially kind of weird because this book does not take place on Tatooine at all. They pretty much finished that story in issue 1. And this issue basically explains how Han Solo had been to Hoth before and he suggests it as a place for the rebels to go. They go there, scout it out, find out there's other smugglers there, have an altercation, and then ultimately leave, planning to go somewhere else. But of course, we know they're ultimately going to end up on Hoth. And then issue number 3, a little bit better of a cover. I don't think this is interior art, at least as far as I can remember. And this is basically Darth Vader sets a force trap for Luke. So Luke is tempted by these like little gnome creatures who want to teach him about the Force, but they actually want to teach him about the dark side. And while that's happening, Darth Vader comes to him in a vision, kind of like in Empire Strikes Back, and they have a lightsaber duel, and he basically tries to convince Luke to start using the dark side. Doesn't ultimately work. Luke gets away. And that's pretty much the end of the series. Now, you really can't talk about a 3D comic book without talking about the 3D. I only had a couple 3D comic books when I was growing up. I remember I had a Rocketeer one that was really cool and I thought had really awesome 3D. But I also figured coming back to these as an adult, it would probably be pretty lackluster. I actually found the 3D in these books pretty effective, especially the first issue and the third issue. The second issue, it might just be a printing issue, but the blues were just a little soft, and so the image just didn't quite look right. But especially in the first issue, there's a lot of layers going on and a huge amount of depth within each panel. Some panels are in 3D in front of other panels, which is kind of cool. Just a lot of really neat effects. Blackthorne, I know, did a lot of different 3D books during their short time doing licensed stuff. I'd be kind of curious to pick up some of the other stuff and just see how it measures up. Anyway, with that, that's my complete Star Wars 3D comic book collection. Happy hunting!